What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of We Run This. I am Chris Illuminati. With me, as always, is Nick Domingo. Nick, what's up, brother?
Not much, man. Getting ready for the holidays,
Yes, the holidays are coming. How do you feel about the holidays, Nick?
If you want to talk to my little sister about how angry I was that she prevented my fiance and I not to go home to see my family in Nashville, you'll know how I feel about the holidays.
She prevented? What did she do? Lock you in a room?
No, man. She's going out doing the most. I love you to death, Alexa, but I didn't feel comfortable, so she's going home.
Oh, I got it.
She's seeing friends. She's going out, and I was like, this isn't what we agreed upon. So my fiance and I canceled our flight, and we're staying in Seattle. So it kind of sucks, but that's where we're at, I guess.
How old is she?
I mean, she's 32. So I mean,
she's not that young.
She's not like a little sister, no.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, is she in the COVID doesn't exist camp or in the COVID can't get to me camp?
No. She's really smart, and that's the thing that pisses me off. I'm like, Alexa, there are a lot of stupid people with this whole thing, and I hate saying that, but there are people who just don't want to take.
You're not speaking out of turn, like there are.
Yeah, and I said to her, Alexa, you're a really smart person, but you're kind of siding with these not so smart people. Like, can we maybe get you back on the smart side and not potentially get mom and dad who are 66, 67 years old sick when we're home? So yeah, it sucks. I'm not going to get to see my family this year, but we were already going to break kind of the suggestion not to travel, and it's probably for the best, knock on wood, that everything's okay. So, how about yourself? How are you prepping for the holidays?
Let's see. I've got everything decorated in my place. My kids help with that. Like, the kids thing help. I won't say that I hated the holidays, but when you get older, the holidays are just like, it's just another thing and another thing you got to prepare for. With the kids, they at least make it a little bit better. Like, you're doing stuff like, so we decorated the tree last weekend, and I let them do whatever the hell they want because it's not my tree, it's their tree. Like, it's there for their benefit. Like, I know what Christmas is. I've had 43 Christmases now. So exactly. I've gotten like that part of it. Like, this is their thing now. So I let them do whatever they want. Like, we got old ornaments. Like, you want to put that on the tree? Go for it. Like, throw it on there, anything. So that makes it a little bit better. The only thing that's kind of getting to me is, so yesterday we had this kind of big snowstorm where I am. Because of COVID, the gym shut down. So I'm kind of getting like closed in that way. And that part is slightly getting to me.
I mean, I could imagine. I look at the pictures of New York and New Jersey. And by the way, the small snowstorm isn't like a fucking foot, dude. Like, that's not just a small snowstorm.
We didn't get it as bad here. I would say here we got maybe a little bit over a foot, maybe.
I mean, that's, again, not a small snowstorm, but it's for you guys. You're right. It's probably small. But I see these pictures and these videos on Instagram and social, and I get super jealous. But then I think about it, and I'm like, but I'm jealous from years prior when you could go outside and it was fun to like go ski, snowboard, sled, whatever, and then go to like a bar with your buddies, and you're just like, dude, how awesome was this? We're going to drink. It's going to be cold. We're around a fire. Like you just said, you're isolated, and you've been isolated for like the year. But you're like, nah, dude, like snow's the last fucking thing I want to see right now.
Yeah. I actually make the joke because it really did happen. But last year, like around late February, this year, beginning of this year, like around late February, we had gotten like no snow, not even like a speck of it. And I was like, wow, we're going to get away with an entire winter without snow and not getting snowed in. And then a virus hit, and none of us were allowed to leave the house for 4 months. And I was like, I probably would have rather had the snow.
Yeah, right. I'm praying for snow, man. We don't get snow that often up here in Seattle. We had a amazing snowstorm a couple of years ago. A couple flurries here and there last year, but I'm praying for snow. So what you don't want, just send it west. Send it to us, please.
You can have it. And the snow is even worse when we talk to people like our guest today, who's Jeff Stern, who basically lives half of his life outside doing things like mountain biking and running, and he just lives outdoors. and not that I can't go out and do those outdoor things in the snow, but it's just like a little bit harder. And so when we talk to people like him who talk about these like long runs that they take or these long bike rides that they take, and I'm like, I can barely get out of my driveway with everything going on.
Yeah, it makes you really envious of the fact that Jeff lives in California. Like, you know, I mean, that just sounds pristine. He was describing like a ultra marathon that's 70 degrees, going through the mountains and the oceans on like your right or left side, and you can run with your shirt off. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, that sounds so great. Like when all this COVID stuff's over and it's summer again, like that's what I can't wait for. And he's like, dude, I can do it right now. Like, why wait 6 months? You know, I'm like, son of a bitch, man. I made some poor life decisions not moving there. So,
well, as much as I hate that he can go out at any time and I can't, I do like talking to people like him because, I mean, we touched on a bunch of different things, running ultras. He's actually a writer for Ultra Running Magazine. The guy's done like a lot of cool stuff, and we had a really good discussion. And stuff like that motivates me to want to do things. And I think I'm there on the ultra run. I think you're almost there.
I actually am. I like need to get into the regular running. I do this cycle where, again, I'm biking more, but it's only because I really dislike running in the cold weather, like doing the whole gear thing. Biking is just a little bit more fun, and I don't know why I'm just on that tip right now. Come March, when the weather starts to change and there's like the spring and the longer days, I think once I get back into the full-time running and push biking side, I'll be there, dude. I honestly, like, we talked to Jeff about it. Like, you and I it'd be awesome to go do it, to say, you know what, we're going to do 30 miles and just finish. Just, that's all that matters. Just, I want to finish it and say, all right, I've completed an ultra.
I'm telling you, we have to pod while we're doing it.
Oh, yes.
We have to record and just talk the entire time. I mean, no one's going to listen to that entire episode, but we could like edit it down to some interesting stuff.
They're like, this is a 28-hour episode of We Run It.
Yeah, and the only exciting things happened in the last half hour because they almost died.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's jump right into our conversation with Jeff Stern. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of We Run This. It's Nick and Chris, and with us is Jeffrey Stern, but Jeffrey Stern, the ultra runner, not the murderer.
Well, I don't know if he actually did successfully murder his
alleged murderer.
Alleged.
Let's talk about that. So I was saying before we jumped on that I did some research on you, and you jokingly said, "I hope you were researching me and not the murderer." So let's hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 5 years ago or maybe longer now, but some of the first hits, if you typed in Jeff Stern or Jeffrey Stern, or some guy in Texas who murder for
I think we're losing you.
Kind of off his wife.
Nick, can you hear him?
No, I can't.
Hold on.
I'm not married, never had me, and I've also never lived in Texas. So,
well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dude. Your internet cut out there in the beginning, and like we lost everything. Like you were going super slow, like we were talking to Max Headroom.
No. Okay, so I say it over again.
Yeah. Let's go again.
It's windy here today, so maybe that's why the Wi-Fi is going in and out.
Yeah. You sounded like Aaron Neville. Remember the singer Aaron Neville?
Yeah.
You're like, one guy. So go ahead. Start it again.
That doesn't build a lot of credibility for me, does it?
It's not you. It's the internet. It's internet.
Internet. It's the Santa Anas, man. You've heard of the Santa Ana winds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was some older guy in Texas who, murder for hire, tried to off his wife, and I've never been married, and I've never lived in Texas, and I'm not that old yet. So that's not me. But luckily, my SEO has been on the rise, and I think even if you type in that now on Google, more ultra running stuff comes up than that negative stuff. So
what's your middle name?
Andrew.
So since you're a writer too, have you considered like the Jeffrey A. Stern or the Jeff A. Stern or the Jeff Andrew or anything like that?
Yeah, sometimes I like go J.A. Stern
Okay.
because that's cool, or just J. Stern.
Okay.
But yeah, for a while I was definitely trying to get the Jeffrey out there because I felt like it was a Jeff Stern murder for hire in Texas. So Jeffrey is a little bit different, but I've never gone by Jeffrey my entire life. So that was always kind of awkward for me because I would write in emails, Jeffrey, and then people would be like, "Oh, do you go by Jeff or Jeffrey?" And I'm like, either or, but I never could introduce myself as Jeffrey. So I don't know,
So, I mean, that's obviously bad to be linked to a guy who did a murder for hire, but like, do you think that's better or worse than Michael Jordan, Michael B. Jordan? Like, that's got to suck pretty much too, right?
Yeah, because I don't know if that will ever really go away, right? Or die, no pun intended. But like the murder for hire thing, yeah, you could even go on Google really quickly right now, and I think it wouldn't even be on the first page. So that's kind of cool. I think we're past it. We're beyond it, especially after some of the cooler stuff I've been doing recently and trying to get my name out there in the ultra running world. So yeah.
So let's talk about that. So you actually started with, you were big into mountain biking, and then you transitioned over to ultra running. Let's start with the mountain biking stuff first.
Yeah, I grew up arguably in the birthplace of mountain biking in just north of San Francisco at the base of Mount Tam, Marin County. And it was always, a big part of my life, just getting out on the mountain and mountain biking and hiking and that stuff. It was never my main pursuit. I was more of a baseball player. And then after college, I was looking to challenge myself and get more into something, anything besides partying and, the typical college lifestyle. And started getting into cycling and then mountain biking, and did the Leadville 100 mountain bike race as my second mountain bike race ever, and really just took a really keen interest into it, and obviously had some natural abilities and pursued that for a while, and eventually got my UCI pro mountain bike license and did a little bit of racing. But just really have fallen head over heels in the trail and ultra scene the last handful of years.
So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the things I've talked a lot about is kind of runner's burnout, and how I've been doing it for 18 years, and, I just needed a new challenge. So I've actually gotten more into cycling. So we flip-flopped, right? You went from biking to running. I went from running to a little bit more biking. Can you talk about that transition a little bit, and what you do to prep between getting on a bike for however long you're going to go, and kind of the dangers of mountain biking, to just hitting the trail or a running path to go, 50, 7,500 miles?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about that, Nick. It's a lot more common to go from running to cycling, just because it's, quote unquote, easier on the body, right? Less pounding. But I do think, not having those thousands of miles in my legs from being a teenager, or, even in my 20s and running a lot, has made, in a way, the transition a little bit easier, because I have this endurance base, this engine from cycling, from mountain biking. And I don't have kind of all those weird aches and pains in the knees and the joints and stuff like that for someone who's been running since they were 12, 13, or even younger. And it's not to say that I wasn't a runner. It was just never my focus. I was never tracking my mileage. I was never, doing cross country or track and field and running 30, 40, 50 miles a week. It's really only been the last, actually, I just realized today, this is like my third full season of running. So I kind of dabbled in it for like a little bit in my 20s, a couple hundred miles here or there. And then just really the last 3 years. And I just got back from a run this morning, actually, and I went over the 3K mark for the first time in my life, which, I don't know, I'm kind of a numbers guy, and the first 3K year in my third full year of running at age 33, I'm like, boom, it was 1000% meant to be, very serendipitous. Like, I'm kind of like riding a little bit of a strange high from that right now. So I apologize for the enthusiasm, right?
No, dude, that's what we want. We want enthusiasm.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
We actually want that. But one thing, so that makes a good transition here. So your second ever ultra, you came in third, correct? Oh no, you won your second ultra. I'm sorry, you won your second ultra. So my question for that is, does that put more pressure on you or less pressure? Because you did it and you won, but now you're kind of expected to win or at least place a lot of the time. Like, how does that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I might backtrack to my first ultra, and it was a pretty stacked field in the Marin Headlands with some big names, Alex Varner and Chris Brown, some guys that have done some big stuff at Western States and other races all over the country and world. And I was ready to go and have a great debut, and I got lost in the first 15 minutes of the race and spent 20 minutes running in circles trying to figure out where to go. And it was not my best execution in a race that I've ever done, to say the least. And then I quickly signed up for a race that was, I think it was maybe a month later, 6 weeks later. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't nearly as competitive, but I'm a competitive person at heart. So I ran at the front with the leaders, and it came down to me and this other guy, and he kind of cramped up at the end, and I finished and won. And yeah, I mean, it definitely puts a little bit of pressure, but I think for me, I kind of expect to do well, and I probably put that pressure on myself. So to have a little bit of that failure, like pretty early on, like in the first ultra I ever did, and then to come back and have that success, it was that redemption feeling, which I really find rewarding. And I don't know, it was kind of the end of the year, so there weren't any more ultras on the calendar, and I was already looking ahead to the new year, and it just really I don't know, it stoked my fire to get out there and go hit up some more competitive races. And really, I like winning, don't get me wrong, but I don't want easy wins. You know, I want to be challenged. I want to be pushed to my limit and really find out what I'm made of. So I was really excited to kind of line up at some bigger races the following year and have some more failures or less than satisfactory results. But I think it's really in those moments that you learn the most, right? If it's easy all the time and you're just constantly winning, I mean, everyone would say, oh, I want to be that athlete that's always winning, but do you really? Because then what are you really learning? Like, are you pushing yourself to new limits? So yeah.
So with that, you said you've been running now for what, 3 years kind of competitively, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And so, Chris and I have been running a lot longer than that, which is crazy because you've now just accelerated past us, in terms of what you've done. How did you get into the ultra running? I mean, to go from biking or cycling to just running would be, let's do a 5K, maybe a half or full marathon. How can you, for people listening, like it's crazy to think that at 30 years old, you said, I'm going to start running, long distance of 7,500 miles. So how did you make that transition? And like, what inspired you to do that as opposed to just saying, I'm just going to do it like, around the neighborhood?
Well, one small correction. I've never run 75 or 100 miles. Not like your guest Dylan Bowman recently, who's done a bunch of hundreds. I'm not even at that level yet. I have done a couple 100Ks, but I think I did a little bit of running every year. So I was like very slowly building a running foundation, we'll call it, that was like in cohesion with the cycling foundation that I had going already. And it just seemed like a natural fit because the longer stuff on the bike was kind of my strong suit. So, big 100-mile, 150, even a couple 200-mile rides where it really becomes an eating competition at a certain point, right? Like, if you're not getting the calories down, you're not going much past like 10 hours, right? Like the body just doesn't work that way. And so I felt like a lot of those skills and things that I had been practicing while riding bikes and racing bikes were very applicable to the ultra running scene, and almost in a way gave me a leg up and allowed me to progress to where I'm at today in, like I said, basically 3 full years of running.
How do you mentally walk through? So you do the second ultra and you win. when you're in there, you kind of have a good idea that you're winning or you're up front or you're at least in contention. So when you're doing a shorter race, it's different. Like if I'm running a 10K, I know there's only a certain amount of miles, but when you're running this really long race and you know you're in front, how do you keep yourself from almost pushing yourself too much and kind of losing steam?
I think it maybe doesn't even really matter that you're up front. It's more of this internal battle or kind of test to make sure that you're constantly aware of your pace and how that's making you feel, and more or less like what you have left in the tank. So if you're, at mile 20 in a 50K and you're starting to get those signs, kind of weak knees, hunching over, dry mouth, it's not really fun eating, and you're really only 2/3 of the way done, you got to back off the pace, right? And whether you're in first place or you're mid pack or backpack, it doesn't really matter. Those signs are all the same. And I think it's just really important to pay attention to them and know where you stand in terms of kind of what your quote unquote perceived limits are. Now, that being said, you're always trying to push those limits, of course. So you can kind of play around and maybe dig yourself a hole in a little bit of that, the kind of, fatigued feeling that goes over your body, like kind of that wave where you're like, okay, that's a sign that something's happening, and maybe I can't really keep going at it the way I'm going at it. But there's things that you can do to kind of mitigate that and bounce back. And so I think it's this constant kind of internal struggle with a lot of these different signs that you're getting and receiving from your body. And, if you're in first or you're running with a guy and you guys are both kind of first and second the whole time, then yeah, maybe a little bit of that goes out the window. But I think you still kind of have to be running your own race at a certain point, or else the whole ship could just go astray, or the wheels could fall off and you could be basically just swimming, hanging on. Just, there's nothing worse than like going backwards in a race, right? Where you go out really hot and then it just seems like it doesn't matter how hard you're trying, like everybody's passing you. That is hands down the worst feeling in the world in a race, or for me, that I've ever experienced. So keeping that in mind and knowing you only have so many matches in your book, you got to be smart about how you pace yourself. I think the best races or runs or events or even bike rides that I've ever gone on are the ones where I start out pretty controlled and end up staying, composed through kind of the middle miles. And then you get to the end and you just compete and you see what you have left and really, really drain yourself of everything you got.
Well, so along those same lines, a lot of people say when they run a half or full marathon or even a 5K, depending on your experience running, they just say they want to finish. Are you immune to that, running these type of distances where, you mentioned your body might just give up on you halfway through or 2/3 through one of these long races, and you're like, dude, I could tap out, or I just want to finish. Like, do you still see that as an accomplishment, as that your end goal, or are you just like, I mean, I'm sitting in last place right now, I'm going to call it quits?
I think that's a very much a personal decision and choice. You would probably get a bunch of different answers from various levels of athletes, and you might get some very high level world-class elite athletes where if they're not winning, what's the point? Like, there's no reason to waste your energy and run another 30 or whatever mileage to get to the finish and be in 10th or 15th or 20th. Something in my DNA, I'm just not a fucking quitter. Like, I just don't quit. Like, the DNF, unless I cannot run and I am just physically unable to keep moving forward, I'm going to finish. I don't care if it's in last place. I had a last place finish a few years ago, I'm not going to lie. And it would, honestly, I look back on it as one of the greatest races of my life. I was completely out of my league. It was a collegiate Division I cross country race here in Santa Barbara at UCSB. And I finished in 37th place, last place out of everybody. But, most of the kids were half my age. But it was such a great learning experience because I hit that moment where I was like, dude, you're in last place right now, and there's 1.5 miles left. And I thought about quitting. I really thought about it. And then I finished, and something like turned in me where I was like, yes, that is what it's all about. It doesn't matter for me, what place you're in, it's the effort you're putting out and what you're trying to get out of it for yourself. And that's one of the most memorable races I've ever had. Yes, it wasn't an ultra. Yes, it wasn't in my wheelhouse, but I was really putting myself in an uncomfortable situation in front of a bunch of people that I knew and, you know, in my hometown, and I was okay with it. I was fine with it. I wear it with like it's prideful for me. Like I came in last place in a race. That's rad to me. Like I can win races and I can come in last, and I can be almost happier to come in last than to win them. And that's just who I am. So I'm never going to quit. I'm always going to keep trying and fighting. And even if it's not a perfect day, it's, you know, those days that aren't perfect that you really kind of get the most out of and learn the most from, and are able to make some adjustments and changes in the future and really find the success that you're looking for.
Where did the no quitter mentality come from?
Playing baseball growing up. I had some really good coaches in high school, and I remember freshman year, we had a t-shirt that everyone got, and, you know, it might sound silly, but it's just ingrained in my head. And on the back of it, it just said, make no assumptions, make no excuses, just work hard. And I think I've probably lived my life every single day by that motto. And it's true. It's like, you can't assume anything in life, right? I mean, talk about a year you cannot assume anything in, right? Like 2020, don't make any assumptions about what's going to happen this year, or even next year for that matter. And just keep working hard. I mean, if you work hard, good things are going to come your way, right? You work hard, you support the people in your life that you know, or even the ones you don't know yet, and you kind of bring each other up and bring everyone together and involved. And I think I learned a lot of that in team sports, of baseball especially. And it's just something that has always, you know, been in my back pocket and I've always leaned on. So yeah, if you're working hard, and there's no quitting in working hard, that's for sure. I mean, there might be roadblocks. It's a very circuitous path, right? Life is not a straight line. I don't know anyone who's ever said, oh yeah, did this and this and this. Even the people on the PhD route and, you know, all these like very structured career and lifestyle choices, it doesn't mean it's always going to work out exactly how you think it is. And I think there's a lot to be gleaned from those kind of curveballs, so to speak. I was good at hitting curveballs in baseball too, so maybe that makes sense.
So, you know, you kind of use that mentality. You talked about the team sport, where you got that mentality from baseball. You actually now coach high school cross country. So kind of a two-part question. One, do you think the sport's gaining popularity with kids? And two, how do you take exactly what you just said about baseball and team sports and toss that onto your kids that you teach and coach?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I've been the head coach. Well, this is actually my first year being the head coach, but I've been the assistant coach for 4 years prior to that. And we've seen the team grow from about 5 or 6 or 7 that first year to we have about 25 kids. And it's a pretty small school, so that's a good chunk of change, good growth there. And I think, you know, a lot of people think running is like the punishment for other sports, right? I mean, you guys have probably heard that.
And usually is.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you played baseball. I played baseball. You got punished by running.
And I loved it though. So maybe I should have started earlier, but then maybe I shouldn't, because I wouldn't be where I'm at. I was always the fast kid. So everyone was always judging themselves off of me when we were running laps or punishment hills or whatever. But I think getting everyone on the team to buy into the fact that, yes, you are running as an individual, but you are also running for the team, because cross country is scored as a team, right? You collect points based on where you finish in meets, and the teams with the lowest cumulative scores win the meets. So the cross-country teams that have the most synergy and are the best friends and are able to push themselves on the course and run as packs and run together and have this very much team mentality are the ones that are going to find the most success. So we not only do running, we focus on a lot of different kind of team building activities, and we get the kids to train, you know, in a typical year, like during the summer on a summer program. And so you really just want to get them to buy into the program. And it was hard in the beginning when you only have 5 kids, but when you have 25 and you've got a couple leaders then that kind of momentum and all that good team energy starts to build. And yeah, it feels very much like my baseball experience from high school, where we all hung out and we all did things, and it becomes much more than sport, right? Beyond sport, it's life lessons, it's learning to help everyone around you, and you can get the most out of yourself by helping your neighbor and your friend, push themselves to new heights as well. And I think learning those kind of skills as a teenager, whether it's in cross country or baseball or soccer, can apply down the road in life and so many other things. So really getting them to understand that yes, it is a running pursuit, a running sport, but there's a lot more that comes into play. And when you can kind of grasp the full picture, you really start to see kind of the horizons that it can take you to.
We recently had on Corey McGee from Team USA. She's a runner. And she talked about, so it's her and her 3 sisters, and they all loved running. Like, they were great runners, and their dad and their mom encouraged them, to check out the sport. I am a runner. I have 2 kids. My son is very fast. I'm a runner. His mom's a runner, but he's kind of not interested. So as a coach, I'll ask you your advice on this. How do I kind of get him interested? I should preface that he's only 10.
Okay, I was gonna say, how old is he?
Yeah,
okay.
He's only 10, but like, we kind of want it because he's fast. We kind of want to push him too. So how do I gently do that without being the overbearing, parent?
Well, I would say definitely don't push him, right? I mean, obviously I'm not a parent. I'm a dog parent, but that doesn't really count. But like, I can't imagine.
Oh God, we're gonna get some flack. We're gonna get some flack for that. Like, some pet parents think they're actual parents.
Well, I mean, I am, but I don't want to.
You are.
Can I ask you a follow-up question before I answer your question?
Go for it.
What's he into right now? Like, what other sports or activities does he like? Does he want to spend his time doing?
He plays soccer, and actually he was just doing fall soccer, and now he wants to do winter and spring soccer. And he was swimming for a while there, but with COVID, there was no outdoor pools, and then we're in Jersey, so now there's really no indoor pools. Yeah. Let's just say soccer.
I mean, Chris, I would say, well, first off, I played baseball year round from sophomore to senior year, and I completely burnt out on it. Like, I wanted nothing to do with it by the time I was applying to colleges, even though I could have played in college. So maybe that's not the best way to tell him that, but what I would say is probably the easiest route is that there's a lot of running in soccer, right? I mean, I've watched the World Cup the past, handful of times, and they track how many miles those guys run on the field in a 90-minute match. I mean, they're doing like 7, 8, 9 miles, and they're all these little teeny sprints. So you could use that as an example and say, hey, what's your son's name?
Evan.
Do you want to play at a high level and like use World Cup as an example, or MLS, and be like, these guys run 9 miles every time they play a match. If you take a little bit of your time away from soccer and work on building your running strength and your endurance and your aerobic capabilities, you're actually going to become a better soccer player by not playing soccer, which is counterintuitive. But think about how many things in life are actually very counterintuitive. You're like, oh, I didn't think about that way. Like, there's a lot of running. Maybe I should practice running. Like, I don't know. Maybe that could be a way to convince him to spend a little bit more time on the sport, where he won't burn out on soccer and he'll try something new, and ultimately it'll make him better at what he loves to do. And then who knows, maybe he'll be like, wow, actually I like this running thing. There's no ball, I can do it whenever I want. My mom and dad love it, all this kind of good energy comes from it, and then maybe he'll just naturally switch over to being a runner. You never know. I think it's too young of an age to close a door on different opportunities, and I think when you start really narrowing down and focusing too much, you're just missing out on stuff, right? You're missing out on the chance to experience something that might be able to change your life. And so I would just kind of, throw some of those ideas out there at him.
So Jeff, actually along those same lines with the coaching, because I played soccer, so I can 100% relate to Chris's son, where I was done playing soccer by the time I went to college. So freshman year of college, I was like, I mean, I could play club soccer. I don't love it. And I don't really want to risk injury and play on Friday and Saturday night. I'd rather drink. So I got into running and thought this is a good way to stay in shape and get that competitive streak kind of out of my mind. Have you had, because you said you've been an assistant coach for 4 years and now a head coach, so a lot of those kids you're coaching are probably going into college and aren't playing other sports. They may not be running competitively. Have you had any come back to you and be like, dude, like, coach, thanks for pushing me, because now this is a hobby that I use not only to stay in shape in college, but also to push myself to just get that competitive streak out of me once a week or, every couple days during a week?
I've had a couple that were on the team for a few years, right? This is my 5th year, so I just had like my first full 4-year class leave, which was kind of bittersweet. Last year we had a couple really good runners that were amazing as freshmen, and they just grew so much over the 4 years, and chatted with them a little bit. Unfortunately, the first year of college for them is kind of a wash, more or less, right? But they were both really gung-ho about doing everything they could do to become better runners, and running wasn't even their main sport. One of them played tennis, and he was really good at tennis, and I think he's on the collegiate tennis team where he goes to school. And the other one was good at soccer, and she knew that the running made her a better midfielder, a better soccer player. So we've had conversations. I haven't quite had that email, that brings a tear to your eye. That's like, oh yeah. But my hope is that as I continue to build this program and really start to, draw kids in away from other sports and realize that running is a lifelong pursuit, that will happen more and more frequently. And honestly, that's one of my biggest goals in life, is just to continue to inspire, the next generation, whether they become competitive runners or just lifelong hobby runners. I want them to, get to my age and older and be like, oh man, I remember, Coach Jeff, that was awesome. I'm so glad I did cross country. And that's more important to me than any race wins or, sponsorships or anything like that. Like that, I think that's kind of the everlasting kind of goal out there for me anyways.
So you're not only a runner, but you write about running. How did that happen?
I just pitched the editor on a story and said, hey, let me write this for you. And she said, yeah. And that was about, I guess, 18 months ago. And I have a good rapport with her. Her name's Amy Clark at Ultra Running Magazine. And I really like telling the human interest side of sports and, athletes that, might not be the big stars that some people are out there, and telling their story and interviewing people, just kind of being involved in running from all aspects, I think is super cool. And it makes my own running feel more inspired. It makes me a better coach, all the things. They're all very interconnected. And I never studied writing before, but I always enjoyed it when I was younger. So it just seemed like kind of a natural fit. And if it's about running, then it doesn't really feel like work. It almost feels more like fun and play. So
nice.
I feel like you're at it. Good, Nick.
Well, I was going to ask you. Go ahead, Chris, because mine's more related to running.
Okay, so I was going to say I feel like you have an advantage because unlike other things, like people can research about ultra running. And people can talk to ultra runners, but you have the advantage that you've done this stuff. So there's a first person perspective to it that a lot of people can bring to an article. So I feel like that might have helped. People can pitch as many ultra running stories as they want. If they haven't done it, there's not that experience of doing it. So do you feel that helps, like the actual doing of it?
Yeah, in a way, because it gives me a little bit of a deeper understanding and more of a perspective, especially if I do happen to be interviewing someone, that set a world record or did some crazy course record thing or a FKT or whatever, I can maybe ask questions that only someone who has some experience in that realm, not to say that I'm going to set a world record, but like has a little bit of that taste. And some of the questions can be a little bit more specific or poignant and kind of dig into details that maybe your typical journalist wouldn't think of asking because they're not an ultra runner or they're not kind of doing that sport. And I guess one example would be this trail up in Washington called the Wonderland Trail. It's about 90 miles long and it goes around Mount Rainier. You probably know all about that trail, Nick.
Yep.
with the kind of the proliferation of FKTs this year, that FKT, both on the men's and women's side, unsupported and supported, went down like at least a half dozen times over the course of the summer. I guess the conditions were really good. The snow levels were low. And yeah, I mean, you guys, you chatted with Dylan Bowman, so he went out and got it. And then 5 days later, another guy went out and took it down a notch by like 20 minutes. And so I interviewed that guy, Tyler Green is his name, partly because I was like, that's incredible. 5 days later, you go and run like 20 minutes faster on a 90-mile course. Like, where do you find 20 minutes? Like, that wasn't even your goal. Like, going into that, he had a goal that was an hour slower than what Dylan had, what Dylan ran. And so I was like, what did you do? And he totally kind of shifted and pivoted his aid station strategy and basically kept moving the entire time, and more or less had 30 seconds of stop time in whatever it was, 16 hours. And Dylan ended up having like 30 minutes of stop time. And that was the difference in the FKT right there. And I was like, dude, that's brilliant. You just kept walking. You never stopped. Like, if Dylan would have kept running the whole time, he would have had the FKT. But he had 30 minutes of stop time, so he didn't have the FKT. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I was thinking about some races where you kind of pity party around aid stations, and you waste 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and before you know, you've spent 30 minutes of just wasted elapsed time without taking a single step forward. And so I was preparing for an FKT of my own, and I'm like, I'm doing this. This strategy from Tyler is brilliant. I can just, get rid of all this junk time, always be moving. And it helped me get my FKT, and it really changed my perspective on, I think, moving forward, whether it's races or big runs like fastest known times, to kind of always be moving forward and keeping that momentum. And unless you really need to sit down for something or, use the bathroom, those kind of things, like, just keep moving forward, and it can kind of pay off in the end when you add it all up.
So if you were to say, you're a beginner runner or even like a veteran like Chris and I, and I'd like to think that we're veterans even though we're not running super long, but
that's the nicest way anyone's ever called me old.
Yeah.
A veteran.
Exactly, we're veterans.
Experience. Retro. Yeah. Vintage.
But, we can go out and we can run 5 or 6 miles, and whether it doesn't matter the time, we know what to expect. We can also go out and run 10, 11 miles, and we know what to expect there. I don't know if the two of us or anyone listening could just say, you know what, all of a sudden we're going to just triple this and run 30 to 35 miles. If you were to try to give someone advice and say, here's how you're going to do it mentally and how you can prep yourself, what would it be? And then B, what are you taking with you? Because you talked about the aid stations, and you obviously can't just say, you know what, I'm just going to go run 30 miles today and not be prepared. So, like, what are you telling people? Dude, you better make sure you have this shit with you, or you're going to hate your life and never want to do this again.
The first piece of advice I would give, you can just go out and run 30 miles or 50 miles. I know people that have done that. And that's a great kind of like trial by fire, and be like, well, just see what happens. I don't know shit, and I'm going to learn a lot real quick, and it might be painful. It might be fun, but yeah, that's one approach. That wouldn't be my approach. I would say slow and steady, right? Just be smart about building to that. So if you really want to run 30 miles and get to a point where you're at least running 30 miles in a few consecutive weeks over the course of, 3 or 4 or 5 runs, so that your body more or less is accustomed to that time on feet. If you can do even a little bit more, that'll make kind of the race day or event day even easier. And then I think a really important piece of advice that people don't tend to think about is the chafe factor.
I was going to say that.
I think you kind of have to experience what that is by yourself for the first time. So more or less, you need to fuck that up. You need to forget to put it in a place that is important. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, I will never forget that again because, XYZ, bloody nipples, like you name it, whatever. But if you want to be smart about it, like just lube yourself up all over the place, anywhere where there is some sort of fabric, even, blisters between the toes and feet or whatever on the heel. Like there's so many places that could chafe. I would say, yeah, buy a tub of it, buy a tube of it, maybe 2 or 3, and just lube yourself up and be nice and slick, and try and avoid that painful experience if you can. And you know what? Even if you think you get every little teeny spot that you think might chafe, there's a good chance you probably missed something. So you'll still get that. You'll get a taste of that experience. And I think everyone chafes in different places, right? Like you start to figure out where you need to focus your energy in terms of lube application. And, but yeah, that would be my advice: is build consistently, get that good base, make a few weeks at minimum, whatever that distance is you're trying to run all at once, ideally or preferably a little bit more. And then, don't forget the lube. Obviously, there's way more pieces of advice I could give, but I think those two are pretty critical.
When you're running by yourself, are you taking like a little bottle of lube in like a fanny pack or something? Like, I know it sounds so funny. It sounds like oh, you bought a bottle of lube. Great. Like, but are you actually doing that?
I mean, I know people that do that, like extreme chafers, where it like doesn't matter how much they put on beforehand or how long they're running, they are going to need a second or third application later on. I have found that I'm not one of those people, like kind of a one and doneer. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't change. But like, as long as I put enough on and in the right places before I go on a run, I can minimize the chafing without carrying extra lube on my body while running.
Mm-hmm. I think carrying around extra lube is good advice for any situation.
You never know. You never know, right?
We said it so many times. You're like, just lube yourself up and get out there. I was like, that's advice for many parts of life. Just lube yourself up and get out there. But so along those lines, not perverted, but you seem like you're a very motivational guy. Anyone that says to you, I want to take up running, I want to take up biking, anything, you're going to try to convince them. Do you find it kind of oddly funny that it took a pandemic for people to become more outdoorsy and try running farther and mountain biking? Like, people like ourselves were probably trying to convince people for a long time, and then what happened was life locked them inside, and suddenly they were like, yeah, I should try biking. I should try running for long distances. Like, do you find that kind of ironic and funny?
A little bit. I mean, I actually wrote a story for ultra running in January of this year, or maybe it was December, and I didn't know about the pandemic yet. And it was called The Rise of Ultra Running, and I had some good stats. And the rise of ultra running is real. It's a real thing. Like it's really booming in the U.S. and it was even before the pandemic hit. And obviously internationally, it's huge. It's much more of a mainstream sport over there. So yeah, a little bit ironic, but I mean, I think the people that are in the industry and in the sport have seen the growth building for a while now. And I guess it was just a matter of time, really, before people realized that there's a lot of positive things to come from getting outside. I mean, this is a nation that has a big obesity problem, right? So like, what's the easiest way to handle that is, 1, eat healthier foods, and 2, get out and move your body, whether it's walking or hiking or running or biking. And if that builds your immune system and confidence and all these things that can kind of help you fight off life's daily struggles and viruses on top of kind of coronavirus, then I guess it makes sense to me. So I don't know that is ironic, maybe a little bit, but I think it was just kind of a natural progression and step for our society and our country as a whole. So it's good to see all these companies, doing really well, and really not taking advantage, but working to promote, like, hey, let's get outside and run, even if it's only for 15 or 20 or 30 minutes. There's a lot to be gained from that, and you can build off that if you're consistent. So yeah.
So what's next for you? What are you looking forward to the most in 2021, especially as we move out of this pandemic, hopefully, knock on wood?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have been saying like, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. And I don't know that necessarily changes anything, right? Like the time and the calendar.
Yeah, and then like you go into New Year's Day, like it's not like
people need a scapegoat.
Yeah. Exactly. People do. No, I get it. I think I took a little bit of time off after my big run, and I'm back to training kind of full speed ahead. So assuming events and races go forward, I'm registered for 100K in Arizona called the Black Canyon 100K, and it's a Western States Golden Ticket qualifying race. And yeah, so I'm training hard for that. That's only 8 weeks away. So we got a couple more blocks, and just really, really stoked to be putting in the miles again and training. And yeah, everything's going pretty well. So that's kind of first on the docket. And then I try and take things one at a time. I mean, I got some other ideas. I think 2021 will be more of like a redo of 2020 in terms of events and races I'm going to. So if they all happen, my schedule is going to more or less be the same as what I thought it was going to be last year at this time. So yeah, get out to Lake Sonoma, hopefully get out to Chamonix and experience UTMB and do one of the shorter races there. And really stoked about going to Alaska and doing Mount Marathon, this crazy mountain race in Seward that goes up and down a mountain. And it's pretty gnarly. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one before, but yeah, I don't only do ultra running. I like trail and mountain stuff as well. So that short, fast stuff.
Do you think, like what we touched on before about the pandemic and more people doing stuff like this, any type of races, do you think when everything opens up again, you'll see an uptick in first timers in all these competitions?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think these people have been running and training, and they're realizing like, oh, there's stuff I can do with this, right? Like once events and things start to come back to, quote unquote normal, like they can go out and use their newfound skills and hopefully a passion, maybe, call it a passion at a certain point, and go out and travel and meet people and do some of these events. So I think we'll continue to see more first timers. And, I think one thing I hit on in that article about 12 months ago was like the balance between men and women in the sport is starting to equalize every year. It's getting a little bit closer to 50-50. So that's super rad to see. Yeah, I mean, anyone, all shapes and sizes can be an ultra runner. And I think that's one of the beauties and one of the draws of the sport is you go to an event and you meet people from all over, all different backgrounds who started running last year or have been running for 40 years or whatever. And like, it's really, really special to kind of build those connections and have those experiences with people from all walks of life. So I think you'll definitely see an uptick in first timers, and hopefully they'll stick around too. All it takes is that one good experience and it's like they're sold. They're ultra runner for life. So that's like me too.
Very cool, man. So tell us, where can we find more information on you, follow you on the socials and all that good stuff?
Yeah, my website and my socials are all uponward or uponward, UPONWARD.com. All the social channels are that as well. And yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions. I'm always happy to connect with new people and chat things up. And, it's great to meet you guys, and hopefully we see you somewhere, whether it's on our cross country run or at an event somewhere. And, but yeah, hit me up. I'm always down to talk it up and chat ultra running or life or whatever, dogs, Well,
we're going to do to you what we did to Dylan and a couple other people. You got 30 seconds. Sell Nick and I on running an ultra.
You're going to have super high highs and super low lows, and it basically epitomizes life. And the longer you go, it becomes more like life in a day. And I think if you can experience life in a day, that'll make kind of your actual real life that much more enjoyable. And you'll take, you won't take for granted simple things like being able to eat, food without an upset stomach, and hydrate and drink beer will taste even better. And you'll come away with all these, like I was saying just a few minutes ago, you come away with all these new friends that, you suffered with on the trail. And there's nothing better than that, suffering with new friends and drinking beer and, feeling bad and then feeling good. Like it's a wild roller coaster ride. So just give it a spin, give it a whirl.
I don't know what they're putting in the water for you ultra marathoners, but that's like exactly what Dylan said. I mean, like it was like spot on what he said. So I mean, there's something in the water, and every time we talk to y'all and the guys who actually just go out and pound the pavement for as long as you guys do, it gets me so geeked to be like, all right, man, you can do this. Like you can do this. You got to adjust your pace, adjust your mind. And I don't know. I can't speak for Chris, but I feel like you may be seeing us sometime within the next like 12 to maybe 15 months at a race somewhere. I that's what I hope for.
I hope that too. I mean, I love like spreading that enthusiasm, and I really feel like it's just the best way to experience a new place. And every time I go to a race, and I think that's what I've missed most this year, is I come away with a dozen new friends, people that I maybe had, connected with online or I never met before. Like your just network just grows exponentially. And it's all these people that are like Dylan and I that are, it doesn't matter what level runner you're at. You are just stoked on being there, on the environment, on running in the mountains, on the trails. And we can all share that together. And the more people you add into that circle, the richer life gets. So I hope to see you guys at some event soon. I got to make it up to the Pacific Northwest and the East Coast for an event. I've never done one in either place. So it's definitely on my list. And part of the draw is, going to new events and going to new races and places and getting out there and experiencing everything we've got. So,
well, if you do a race near either Nick or I, I'll talk for myself. I'll do it. I'll try it. Nick, I can't talk to you.
I'm holding you to that, Chris.
I'll do it. Right. I've said, I mean, and we said this on the last episode and we've said it on other episodes before. The location is going to sell me. The miles are going to suck no matter where they are. But if I'm occupied with my mind and my head and my eyeballs, the miles aren't going to suck as bad. So like, if you're going to convince me to try and run, 50 miles through new parts of New Jersey that I've already seen, you're not going to get me out there. But if you're going to convince me of different parts of the country, you'll probably get me out there.
Come to Santa Barbara. We have a beautiful ultra that runs up and down the mountains, and you have views of the Channel Islands National Park and the ocean the entire time. And it's typically 70 degrees and sunny, so you can run with your shirt off and don't worry about chafing your nipples. And it's a great opportunity to run your first ultra.
You had me at Santa Barbara. You could have stopped. You could have just said, "Come to Santa Barbara." I would have. All right.
Let me know when you want to come. You can stay with me. No problem at all. Anytime.
Cool. And Nick will do it too, right, Nick?
I'll watch the dog, but I will do it. Honestly, I mean, that's what you just described is Washington State with the mountains and the water. And anytime I get up there and can go through all those mountains, it's like your mind is numb. So yes, I will be there. I honestly, let's make it happen.
Cool.
We will. I'm stoked.
Jeff, thanks for coming on, and we wish you luck.
Yeah, guys.
With running, biking, writing, and everything.
I really appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation. The enthusiasm was palpable, and you guys are awesome. And I hope to see you soon and chat more as well. So thanks so much.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it.
Likewise, dude.
And that brings another episode of We Run This to a close. Nick and I want to thank everybody for listening. If you love the podcast, please share it with friends or leave a review on iTunes. And remember to follow Nick and I on social media. He's at It's Nick Domingo, and I'm at Chris Illuminati on Twitter. Or follow us both on Instagram at WeRunThis_pod. Until next time, see everybody out there.